listening to the Metal Command Podcast.
Welcome back to the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you, and today I'm here to talk with Mark Zonder, the drummer for Warlord, also plays drums for the band A to Z, and spent a lot of time in the band Fate's Warning over the course of his career. And I'm bringing him on the show for you today to talk about the Warlord album, to talk about the upcoming A to Z album, to talk about the metal scene. Mark is a great guy. He's a phenomenal drummer and a great musician. This is definitely a fun interview. So with that said, here is the interview with myself and Mark Zonder of Warlord. I talked to Giles this morning. Very, very cool dude. First time ever speaking to him. But I got to be honest with you. My first reaction, and I said something very similar to him on the when him and I did our interview, that I think this album is awesome. And I think that even though it was announced and there were some pushback, some fans were saying, the typical, oh my God, Bill's not in the band, it's not going to be good. I'll be honest with you. You guys nailed it with this record, and I think it really lives up to the history that this band has had over the 40 plus years it's been around. So talk about bringing this project together and bringing this band together and making this record a little bit.
Well, if that's the way you feel, we don't need to go on. That's good. You can print that. We're good. I mean, you said it. No, I appreciate it. I'm glad. I'm glad that you like it. It was a difficult decision, but it wasn't a difficult decision. And people ask me all the time, well, Mark, when Bill first passed away, he said, oh, there's not going to be any more Warlord, and blah blah blah. Well, of course, a guy passes away. What am I going to do? Hey, 2 weeks from now, Warlord's going on a tour, and hey, I had this record I kept to myself, and we're going to put it out. I just needed some time. And then Giles basically came around, and I've known Giles forever, for a long time, and he's managed various bands, and the Warlord stuff. He sang with Warlord. He did a song on one of the albums, did the live stuff, and he just said, hey, how do you feel about just taking control of this and let's go do this, And I always thought that. And Bill had told me flat out. He told me flat out, hey, because he was people don't know, he was very ill. He was ill for a good 20 years or so. I remember recording Rising Out of the Ashes in New York before I was even married in the late 1990s. Mm-hmm. And he comes in with a big satchel of drugs that he had to take he had a gastro problem, which is when that happens, you just can't even get out of bed. So he said, hey, just go get another guitar player, man. He goes, just make sure he plays what he's supposed, and just go play. He goes, I want the music to spread. I want the music to be alive. And you got to remember, Warlord didn't do 40 world tours or anything like that. So it's not like we exhausted the live thing. I used to love playing that stuff. I mean, I still love playing it. So also when Giles came to me, he showed me these emails that Bill had sent to him saying, hey, if something happens and I'm not here, I want you guys to take it and move it forward. Because Bill and Giles were a lot better friends than Bill and I were. Bill and I were business partners and music guys, and we had the ultimate respect for each other. Yeah. Never had an argument, which is kind of interesting in a band. Never an argument. Not even a disagreement, really. We just respected each other. You do what you do, I do what I do, and we're good. But him and Giles were like buddies. Giles would go there for months at a time and just hang out. And so Giles really knew him per se. And when he said that he wanted us to keep going with the stuff and to put it out and everything, I didn't have a problem with it. What people really have to realize, besides getting over themselves, is the fact that the guy died. We did not kick him out of the band. We didn't hijack something. He died. He's got his wishes. Tells Giles in emails, hey, take my stuff and go play it. He tells me, get another guitar player and just go play myself. I didn't want to do that when he was still alive. I didn't think that was right. So there we are. And, Giles, Eric, the guitar player, and Jimmy Waldo, the keyboard player, are the guys who really did the heavy lifting. Philip and I sat back and played the drums and the bass. We went through stuff that I had in my computer that Bill and I had been working on since like 2016. Because after we played that last gig in Chania, that festival, we talked about going back and doing a Deliver Us style 3 to 4 minute rock songs, not the big epic, not the big keyboards, just, old school metal. And so we started putting stuff together, and he was just so sick he couldn't get it to the album state. So I had a bunch of stuff in my computer, his actual guitar tracks, you know. There was other stuff on tapes and stuff that we pulled that Giles had, that Bill had given Giles, and they basically put it together. You know, is it 105% all Bill? No, because certain things were like ideas. Certain things were, you know, just 4 bars of something maybe. So they did a lot of the heavy lifting to put it together and put it in song form. The whole idea behind it, everybody going into it knew this has to be Warlord and this has to be Bill. This isn't the new reggae version of Warlord. This is not the new metal version of Warlord. Okay, we have to keep it there. Eric, the guitar player, had studied Bill. He knew all the whole Greek thing that Bill was doing. He studied his sound. He copped all those old nasty 1980s Electric Mistress, Strat, Marshall making a whole bunch of noise kind of sound. And Jimmy did the same thing, went back and studied all the keyboards. Oh, that's a Mini Moog and that's this. So coming together, the one of the main concerns was just having it sound with the Warlord sound. Just like we did back in the day, we're not sampling drums. I kind of approached this how I would have in the 1980s. I didn't get into it too heavy and too deep and really make it proggy or try to make it like, you know, like what I would do probably now with something to try to be creative. It's keeping it in that same 80s metal vein, and I think we really accomplished that.
I would agree with that. I think the whole vibe of the record, and I think the whole way that this album sounds I think it's right up there with anything the band has ever done, you know, and it has that feel to it. And so Giles and I actually, we talked about a lot of things. The thing that I always push back on people when, you know, when you put the first song out, I saw a lot of that pushback. Most of that seemed to go away. I didn't see as many people, because then people heard the song like, oh, this is actually really, really good. Right. And then they kind of quiet down and the haters seem to kind of sort of disappear at that point. But my thing is this, 2 things. First of all, that I always listen to music to see if I like it or not. Right. I don't, if there's a certain member that's not in the band, fine. Let me hear what it sounds like. If it's good, okay, great. If it's not, then I can point, okay, that dude's not in the band anymore. But I think that after listening to this record repeatedly, especially today, I must have listened to it 3 or 4 times while driving, that you really nailed it. And anybody that's, you know, people that haven't heard the album, anybody that hears it, I could tell you, if you've liked the band's back catalog, I think it's great. And one last thing, and you can jump in here and, you know, give me your thoughts on it. Giles brought it up, and it's something I always bring up on the show too, is we have bands that either have one original member or they have no original members. Like Giles brought up Riot, right?
Yeah, well, that's the go-to.
That's a good one. I brought up Stradivarius. They don't have anybody that's original, but again, they had a guy a singer and a keyboard player that's been in the band 30 years. You know, The point is that the more you play and the more you keep the band relevant, you're still keeping the music relevant for as long as possible. And Giles brought it up, and I've said this on my show. Do you want the band to just disappear in obscurity, or would you rather have their music still out there, people still talking about it? And that's kind of how I view. That's why I don't look at things like when someone loses a member of the band, oh my God, it's going to suck. Don't think that. I listen to it. If I like it, I like it. This album I like quite a bit. I'd have it, like I said, I'd have it up there with anything Warlord, you know, and Bill had done over, you know, the last 40 years. So that's kind of where I'm at.
It's interesting because I go back to the philosophy of when Shanker left UFO and Paul Chapman came in, and everybody was like, oh, blah, blah. And you listen to, I think it's, was it No Place to Run? The one where they're standing around the gas station. Anyways, First album that Paul Chapman did. And you listen to it and go, is it Shanker? No, but it's good. It's really good.
Correct.
Still Fog. It's really good. Yeah, it was funny when it first came out, and the you know, certain areas of the world like to speak up more than others. And I guess they never got that thing when they were younger. You know, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. But I love the one where I see, and we all shouldn't be reading Facebook because all it does is take us down this big rabbit hole. But you know, oh, this doesn't sound anything like Warlord. And I had to write. And I said, you do know that that is Bill's guitar. That is a song that Bill and I were working on verbatim before he passed. That's me playing the drums, and that's Bill. What doesn't make it Warlord? And it's just kind of like that instant hater kind of thing. Well, Bill's not there, so this isn't Warlord. And the funny part, and this came up, and it never crossed my mind to change the name of the band. What would that do? Would that make it sound better?
Mm-hmm.
What? And what people need to really get over, again, and they don't understand, and I'm going to kind of put it in biblical terms, but, I went to the mountaintop with Bill. Nobody else did, okay? So you can sit in your house and whatever and think you're some Warlord aficionado or whatever, but I was there from the very, very beginning, because there really was, Bill had Warlord in his head, but until him and I got together, there was no Warlord. There was no previous form of Warlord before it was Bill and I. So when people say, oh, you shouldn't do this, it's like, why not? If anybody's entitled, I am, So once we got over that hurdle, it'll be fine. I think the real kicker is going to be when we go out and play live. It's going to be tremendous. It'll be note for note. There's no jamming going on. There's no, blues solo so Eric can show what he does. It's just note for note. We're playing 17 songs, note for note, and it's going to be ridiculously tight. And I want people to just close their eyes and enjoy the music, because that's the thing. Bill was always about the sound and the band. He wasn't about him being a guitar god, or anything like that. And God knows he could have been, if he wanted to promote himself that way. But it was about the band. It was about Warlord, and each individual guys he valued just as much as any other piece of it. So we're just going out to play the music. That's what it's all about. And I think that'll be a big turner as well. That'll turn a lot of heads, I think.
Personally, for me, if it were me as speaking from like the fan standpoint, this album is very good. I fully believe that you will be pretty successful with whatever shows you play with this band. I would love to see that continue until, people can't play anymore, or even it would be cool if you made another record, and I know the other record is a whole different ball wax. I get that, because this one hasn't even come out yet. But for me personally, after hearing the album, I don't see why this shouldn't continue. That's just my opinion.
It shouldn't be what?
I don't see why it shouldn't continue after the tour.
There's definitely not an end date. There's no expiration on this, and we've already talked, and I've already kind of talked about it, and I've said, hey, it's you never say never to anything, but it would be, to me, there's only so much meat on the bone to go after to get. I'm thinking we're going to go out and play. The guys are going to really get to know each other. I mean, some of us already know each other, but I mean, like, really become a tight unit. And the guys understand that Warlord sound. So if we sit down and say, hey, man, let's, whether here's some drum ideas or whatever, or, they're not going to come back to me and start playing like, Rammstein, or they're not going to come back and with Pantera riffs and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a problem with that at all, Mm-hmm. I don't understand why. I mean, again, you'll run into the classic haters, but hey, this is about, sounds funny, but this is about having Warlord fans bring their kids to see the shows that are probably 25, 30 years old anyway. So it's like, that's kind of what it's about, and again, it was a blessing and a curse, but Warlord didn't play a gazillion shows. So it's not like you're going to have people going, oh yeah, man, I saw him back in the day. Trust me, there's probably not over 10,000 people that ever saw Warlord back in the day,
right?
Or in 2013, 14. So no, absolutely. I look forward to it. It's, and the truth is, it's kind of tough for me, because I've kind of got my foot half in and half out. First record, a Warlord record that I did without Bill per se. I would probably feel more comfortable doing a Warlord record completely just new guys, because it's fresh and it's new. but yeah, it's really about the music, and it's about having fun, and it's about playing it live, because we all know that it's not about money. There's no money in this, please. Here we are trying to figure out, hey man, don't have that cup of coffee at the airport. It's going to tip the budget. So I mean, it's tough, and it's even gotten worse.
Yeah.
For smaller bands, and just the money that it takes to drive around in a van. And we're not even talking tour buses.
Yeah.
So no, it's just all for the love of it, and I feel very, blessed that I'm in this position to be able to do this, because you got to remember, this is going back 40 some odd years. And this, to me, this was all the bands that I've ever played in, so on and so forth. This was like the coulda, shoulda, woulda band, to me. This was like, the band. And it's just gratifying to be able to go out and play live and play these songs, with guys that I love, and guys that are like just the right kind of guys. Because and I know we've been around long enough. As you go through this business, yes, you're doing different endeavors, but all the guys might not be, your guys per se. You have to deal with it because it's a business, and you have to deal with it. But right now we have this lineup, and it all could blow up tomorrow. You know what I mean? Giles could turn into a raging alcoholic. I don't know. I mean, it happens. But I'm just saying, it feels so good. It feels right. Everybody's into it. It's not like, oh yeah, man, I haven't talked to, the bass player, since the last time I stole that $50 out of his wallet, or whatever. So it's one of those things where it's very excited about it, and, ready to go.
Absolutely. So, speaking of other things, I'll kind of trail off the Warlord thing a little bit. The next A to Z album, really quick, kind of maybe chime in and talk a bit about that. How was that going for you? I know the first album I thought was fantastic, and maybe if you want, talk a little bit about what we might be in store for on the next one.
Everything's great. I had to make some shifts. I had to do some changing around. I'll make it kind of short and sweet, but my good friend there, Phil Ehart, says it best. Some guys just aren't manageable, and I thought it was a great record. The press thought it was a great record. The audience response thought it was a great record. The label was shocked. The label didn't expect what it did. I mean, we were also pushing, when I say we, it's basically me, but pushing the living daylights out of it. We did 11 videos for it. We kept it going. 11 months in, and I know this is nothing compared to bands, but we're banging like 80,000 views that are real views, not like computer generated views. And I'm going, wow, there must be, people must like this, So the new lineup is Jimmy Waldo, obviously Philip Bino, Nick Van Dyke is playing guitar and writing, and Simone Molaroni, who did the mix, is also a phenomenal guitar player, is playing the leads. It's a thicker record. It's a deeper record. It's got a lot more grit to it. It's going to appeal to someone that wants to rock a little bit more. It also has a little bit more of a progressive kind of, not progressive like 5s and 6s and 9s, but just a little bit more progressive, I guess is the word. I mean, Bino's busting out the cello, kind of thing, and I think it's fantastic. I kind of run a kind of a tight ship as far as, this is the direction we're going. It's like, okay, this is really cool, but where's the hook? Okay, this is really cool, but it's going on way too long. It's like, it's very controlled. Hugh Syme's doing the artwork. Just going to do another full-blown package and hopefully get this out on the road. Again, you run into problems. That's why I'm so blessed or happy or thankful. Thankful is the word. With Warlord, because I know the guys are all moving in the same direction. And a lot of times the stuff you're playing in a band situation, and everybody's not moving in the same situation or in the same direction, and it becomes a problem. And it was just very disappointing that spent all this money on the record, overly excited about it, loved it, was just just giddy about it. It came out and it caught, and we're all set. We're getting the calls to go play gigs. We're getting things coming in. It's like, oh my God, this is great. We're doing the whole thing. We're doing the press, all this stuff. And all of a sudden, like, one guy in the band can't go on tour. And then it's like, okay, well, we know a million guitar players, so let's go get somebody. And like, not like it doesn't happen every day. And then someone else doesn't want to go out unless it's the original lineup, and the whole thing just died.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't we go? I'll be free in June, which was 9 months away. And I'm like, no one's going to want to see this band in June. Please. Again, not everybody moving in that same direction. So kind of learned a valuable lesson. It's the first record that I really produced, by myself. And it's like, you really got to surround yourself with guys that, number one, are mature. Number two, that will tell you straight up. And none of this thing of like, disappearing for 3 months and not hearing from them while you're trying to give them money. It just got ugly. And I got to that point where I said, I can't have guys holding up my career. It's time to move on, and I wrote with a whole bunch of different people, big, small, in between, whatever. And just when me and Nick started doing it, I've known Nick for 30 years or so, it just clicked and it was great. And there's a guy that, that I love, and there's a guy that I trust, and he'll tell me straight up, he already told me, he goes, hey, when you go to play live, I might not be able to make it because, my work, but I'll give you 6 guys that can fill in, so just pro. I guess that the word pro has really gotten kind of deteriorated over the years, I think, in the music business, because there used to be a certain, well, I take that back. There's always been goofy people, and they don't understand how like business works, in a band. So, But no, it's great. I can't wait for it to come out. It's about to be mixed. It's got everything. It's a great progression, I think. It's not a carbon copy of the first record. There is a little bit more, teeth to it. It's edge. It's rocking. It's great. The thing that's really evident, 2 things, and they were the changes that I made. The keyboards are not so much of a filler and fluff, but more in a John Lord kind of angry Jimmy Waldo kind of E3.
Yep.
And the guitar playing, what Simone brought in was that Steve Lukather kind of orchestrated textural guitar parts that really took it to another level. Just completely blew my mind.
Well, I'm really excited to hear that. I love the first album. And so that's a cool thing to hear about, because again, when I remember when I heard that, and I remember I heard the people that were playing on it, and I'm like, I'm going to check this out. And I heard it, and I was actually, from the first song, that record caught me. It's almost like the perfectly recorded record. And I said this before, the songwriting was great. It wasn't crazy progressive. It was pretty straightforward. There was no like 9-10 minute songs on it. It was just a straightforward record. And so I'm really looking forward to the next one.
Awesome.
All right. So a couple more things, and then, we'll finish up here. As far as, Warlord is concerned, I know you guys have some shows that are basically planned, and where does, what do you have planned and booked so far, as far as where you guys are going to be playing? And do you plan on playing any shows, maybe a couple shows here in the States?
Well, absolutely. Our big problem, and it's not really going to be a problem, but the big problem is like not that no one wanted to book them, but no one knew what the band was going to be like. It's not a band it wasn't like Saxon where you knew what you were going to get, So no one knew. So we were trying to put these gigs together, and we did, and we're playing a couple festivals at the end of August. We're lucky enough to be headlining a few of them, a couple smaller like gigs in Holland. Then we're going to Greece to play some kind of Mondo big festival that's like a Warlord festival. Going back to play, Italy and France in the middle of September, and then we've had an offer to go to Japan toward the end of end of September. So what the plan is to get this going, and as you know, as I know, you got to get like the little video clips up on YouTube, and you get them on Facebook and get the buzz going. It's like, wow, this band is really something. And I'll be very honest, we have 2 guitar players that could be my kids as far as age-wise. So there's going to be kind of a youthful exuberance. I don't think guys are going to be running all across the stage, but it's going to be it's going to be good. It's, I mean, I've seen videos already of these guys playing together and working on songs, and Giles will hold his own, and Bino's an animal. So Jimmy's going to have to get used to playing behind the drum riser, but that's okay. Hey, Ozzy's guy did no Jimmy. Like I said, these are guys that like you don't have to worry about like when you say something. Am I going to offend him? Is he going to understand what I'm talking about? None of that. So it'll be great. It's gonna be rocking. I can tell you that.
It's interesting. You brought up how Warlord really didn't play like tons of gigs, and it was like the band would put some records out, and then you wouldn't hear from them for a while. Then a release of some kind would come out. So it wasn't like they were putting out Warlord was putting out albums every 2 years. So you go and put these videos up, we haven't heard much from the band, obviously in a very long time. Were there a lot more people into this than you probably thought, like as far as the response went when you started posting videos of the new album? And, like people that maybe had found the band and, because when you have a band that's kind of sporadically around, it's hard to gauge that. Right. And you're in a social media age, and were there numbers that surprised you at all?
Yes, I think what surprises me more, we've never really had the full-on assault of like what's going to happen now. Now it's going to be an assault. You have a label, good label, High Roller. They're putting the album out. They're going to work it. Obviously, we're doing interviews. We're going to go play live shows. We're doing the cycle. So we'll see what happens with that. But what gets me more is over the years where I hear about all these bands that say that they're so influenced by Warlord. And I mean, Hammerfall's a great example. Joakim and I are great friends, but they open their shows with "Child of a Dam," a Warlord song. So what does that tell you? Little influence. A lot of people have said, that the band has been a big influence. And I don't really like to put labels on things, but they say it was like one of the first American quote power metal bands. Now, whatever your definition of power metal band might be, but I'll take it, whatever. But yeah, we were kind of, Rainbow, Sabbath, Uriah Heepish kind of thingies where our head was kind of at. But Bill was just an original, and that's the real truth to the matter. He was an original, and way ahead of his time. And we were just kind of doing what we were doing. So if it's power metal, whatever. But I think it influenced a lot of people. The sound, we stole it from somebody. So if someone steals it from us, God bless, that's kind of what it's all about, so, but yeah, it's, I'm looking forward to just that thing of people hearing this live, which is so different than hearing it on a record.
Yeah.
And really having it, come through that PA and just rock the place.
Yeah. High Roller has always done a great job with not only a lot of they do a lot of reissues. I first heard of them when Jag Panzer had a whole bunch of stuff that was reissued, and I bought some of those, and they had this box set they put out, which completely blew my mind at how awesome this thing was. So
they're great.
Again, they do a great job on a lot of the reissues and stuff that they put out for bands, and it's kind of nice too, because you have a new album coming out through them, and they pretty much have reissued the whole back catalog, so it's all available from the same place.
Absolutely. And also the thing that you have to go back to is, number one, they're just, everything I can say is just completely positive. They did the album cover. They took it upon themselves to do it, which, number one, took the load off of us, which is great, and number two, they did an amazing job with it. They've just been great from the beginning, and it was kind of a no-brainer, like when we came to that point, it's like, well, do we want to go shopping, or do we want to just go with High Roller? And it was a no-brainer. They're like I said, though, they've done, and you've said, they've done a lot of reissues. I'm not sure how many, new issues they've really done. They're more of a reissue thing, but so far they've done an amazing job. Yeah. Amazing.
And if they design the album cover, looking at that album cover, that just looks like what would be a traditional Warlord album cover to begin with. So there are people at the label that have liked the band probably for years.
That was my point. Getting old, I forget these things. The owner is a huge Warlord fan, which always helps.
Yeah.
Which always helps. So no, absolutely. They've been great all the way around the block with everything. I can't say one negative thing.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you one of my last questions here. Giles brought this up in the interview, and I agreed with him because I could point this out about some other bands, but we were talking about, similar, it's a similar conversation that we just had here, where we talked about how certain members of a band may be missing, but is the music good, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing he said about you was that if the band didn't have you as the drummer, it would completely change the sound. And I agree with him, because I bring that same thing up with Slayer with, when they took Dave Lombardo out of the band, even though Paul Bostaff's a great drummer, it just completely changed the band's sound. And I've always said that drummers and bands can really dictate how a band sounds. And, to that you say what?
Well, I agree. A couple reasons. I mean, you could kind of, if you want to really A-B it, if you listen to the Lordy and Guard stuff with the drum machine,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes real obvious. Okay. But it kind of goes back to my whole thing when I started playing the drums when I was 7 is I wanted to be, and I didn't know him at the time, but I wanted to be Eddie Van Halen of the drums. I wanted to be known, not just a guy playing in a cover band, not a guy going boom tap. I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted the limelight. I wasn't going to be playing blazing solos, but I wanted to have a certain style. And I worked and I studied different things, and just to have like my style. So that number one comes into play. Number two, what really came into play is Bill and I, for a couple of years, just him and I in a warehouse in San Jose, banging out songs. When you're playing just with a guitar player, as a drummer, you can start kind of, getting a little adventuresome, because you're not worried about the bass player and the keyboard player. And we started working stuff out, and that was probably one of the first times that I've ever played where it really opened up my playing, and I could kind of just play what I heard or play to him. If you listen to a lot of the Warlord stuff, you'll hear interplay between the drums and the guitar, whether it's little lead lines and we play them together kind of thing, or whatever. That's by design, okay? And that was just the Warlord style, and it was my style adapting it to Bill. He wasn't really adapting his style to me, because he was writing the majority of it. But yes, very much so. Drummers, I think, can definitely, change things around. I think you could, if they're playing around with that idea of Rush going back out again, even if you got a guy who can play it note for note for note, it's just not going to be, especially a band like that was so specialized with 3 different guys. Obviously, there's bands in history that have proven it doesn't matter who the drummer is. You're fine. But no, I definitely I appreciate Giles saying that, and because a lot of he stood up when we first started doing this, and he was trying to explain to people that Mark's kind of part of the sound too. Okay, this isn't Mark's kind of part of this too. So, and he's still here. So, but no, I appreciate the nice words.
Yeah, and I agree with him, because there are certain bands that when you take the drummer out of the equation that was there, like I'll give you an example. I think. And I'm saying this changed. And what I'm going to say is, I'm saying this. I think it changed it for the better. I think when you joined Fate's Warning, a lot of that sound, a lot of your style really helped change that band. And I like the era that you played in is probably my favorite era of that band. Even though I love the last, like I said, even though I like a lot of the albums, the later albums and stuff, but when you played in that band, I really thought that you really brought something different to that band sound. And that's my opinion anyway.
No, I know what you're saying. It's interesting, because when Jim contacted me to play in the band, I told him flat out, I go, if you guys are doing that no exit kind of thing, and, kind of a little thrashy or whatever you want to call it, I go, I'm not your guy. I go, that's not really what I'm into. He goes, oh, no. We're looking to change of a different direction, but we just don't think our current drummer can go with us to that thing. And I guess at the time they were having Steve do demos of the same songs that I was doing, like working on and stuff like that. I do think the one thing that I brought to that band, besides anything else, and I'm kind of proud of it, is that era that you're talking about. I think it has groove and pocket. And I think it's, even though it might be odd time or whatever, all the stuff that I played on, I feel that I was kind of driving the bus as far as kind of maneuvering where we were going. And I was there for everybody to lay back onto as
Yeah.
well. It wasn't like it was like, rats in the cupboard and like, what the hell's the drummer doing? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on? I was never a crazy fill guy. It was more about cool patterns that everybody could lock into. I was never a big kind of guy. I mean, when you play a 4-piece kit, it gets a little tough to do that. But no, I just really thought my mark on that whole band was about the pocket and the groove, and that people could get it. They, even though it might have been odd time, because I was kind of famous for taking 2 5s and making it a 10, or taking 2 7s and making it a 14, which you could play a groove to, and it worked out well.
Yeah, and again, my first, I think Parallels was the album that really, like, I've liked Fate's Warning over the years, but I think Parallels was definitely the album that really got me hooked on them. I mean, that's kind of how that worked for me. And then obviously I ended up getting into the band, quite a bit after that. I mean, there were some great songs. I thought Disconnected was a good album. Inside Out was good. Pleasant Shade of Gray I thought was great. And actually, Pleasant Shade of Gray was actually, when I started my radio show, was the album that came out. It came out right around that time, and Metal Blade was really kind of hammering me about Fate's Warning. And that's because I kind of felt, I really didn't listen to him as much in the 90s after Parallels. I mean, I listened to a couple albums, but I ended up getting back into the band when that album came out. So
yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one.
And it's just like, that is the era that I've liked, even though I love the last album they put out, right? The last couple records, I think they're great. But what got me into them as more of this like hardcore Fate's Warning fan was Parallels. That was like the album. Like, you always have that one album that makes you a fan of a band, and that's the one that got me into them, where I really got deep into that band's music.
Yeah, that was a great record. That was a coulda, shoulda, woulda record. There's no reason that didn't explode just like Queensryche exploded at that time. I mean, except for the fact that we weren't on a major label, but it had the songs, Eye to Eye, it had the songs. There's no question about it. That was a great record.
Well, hey, man, I got to tell you, I'm really looking forward to what's in store for you with Warlord. I think that this is going to be a great thing. I think playing more shows than what the band really had played over the course of time, I think is going to be great. It's going to bring that music out, and I really think this is going to be a great thing to keep Bill's work alive, in my opinion. And,
absolutely, I agree.
I'm really looking forward to this coming up, man. Any last words to say to any fans or anything that are going to be checking this out?
We'll be out there. I guarantee you. I can't guarantee the weather, but I can guarantee the band is going to be very tight, and we will sound like the record. I can guarantee you that.
That's great, man. Well, hey, I thank you for coming on. Seriously.
Oh, my pleasure, Tony. Always, man. Always.